Hi, everyone. I think everybody's in now. I am going to do the briefest of introductions because certainly for Columbus Citizens Foundation members, Frank Somma needs no introduction. He's a very active member. And in 2020, he was one of the very last events we did before we closed for COVID. And it was when your book had come out, Frank. B2B is P2P. And it was actually a very engaging conversation with you that night. And I think we all came away learning a lot about some of the transitions you'd done professionally over time and some personal family challenges that you talked about that night. But I think the major theme was success often comes from being a really good listener, as well as being talented and good at your particular field. But a lot of what differentiates you and other successful people is that ability to quietly observe and then figure out your next move. And I think the other point you made that night was don't be afraid of failure, that you can have a really bad experience and climb out of it and get on the right path again. So I am going to turn it over to you because we want to hear from you, not me, and really looking forward to a conversation with you this evening.
Well, yeah, will definitely be conversational. But touching on a couple of points that you just made, it's really interesting that, none of us have ever heard anybody say, I hate that guy. All he does is listen to me. It's what tends to happen, and especially in some younger people that I counsel, because I do a lot of coaching and different speaking events, and some of the younger people that are just kind of developing their chops in business, and they have a lot of knowledge. And when you have a lot of knowledge, it's often difficult not to offer that knowledge because you think that this next thing that I say will clear everything up. My experience has been, and the science tells us, that it's really about asking great questions and listening. And one of the interesting things in business development and as an entrepreneur, that, we can ask great questions, we can ask leading questions. And, we've all watched those courtroom dramas, right? When the guy says, objection, he's leading the witness. It's a form of question that's so powerful, it's against the law. So, we get to do that. So I would encourage people to ask good questions and then ask more questions. When I wrote the book, I was very fortunate to interview some super successful people. And it was interesting because the book is about selling B2B. It's about business development. And what I predicated writing the book on was that it wasn't necessarily going to be classic salesperson out knocking on doors looking for business, but rather, how can you become more charismatic and more persuasive? We all have these asks in life. Dan Pink's book, To Sell is Human, he said that in his research and a survey that he did, that the average business person spends between 40 and 50% of their time asking other people to part with resources for their good. Selling. This is what we do in life. We're convincing, and this is for, you're convincing your kid to read more, you're convincing the babysitter to stay later, you're convincing your significant other to have this restaurant or this vacation versus that, you're convincing your partner, your colleagues to take this direction versus that. So the book is all about those kinds of things and how we can, best respect someone else and get to the conclusions that we want to get to. And as I was saying in interviewing, I was really blessed to have interviewed some super successful people. And a matter of fact, among them is one of our members, Frank Fusaro. And in talking to, and I asked him, what does it take to be great? Frank was a guy with a briefcase and shoe leather that went out and started a business that is wildly successful. And he did it, but by his own hand. And Frank said to me, it was very funny. He said, do you remember in the New York Daily News, they had that comic strip, that Joe Palooka? I'm like, I don't remember it, But anyway, he said, well, Joe Palooka was this handsome blue-eyed boxer, and it was so popular that they made this toy. So picture a bowling pin about 3 feet high, made out of plastic, a blow-up thing. And in the bottom was weight, and on the front was an image of Joe Palooka with his dukes up. And you would hit it and it would go down and come back. So this I researched, called a bop toy, right? And it's popular with kids. You hit it, it falls down and comes back. And Frank said, if you want to be great in business, that's what you need to be. You need to be able to go down and come back every time, because you will suffer much more rejection than you will get positive responses. And I mean, he's super right. You know, the statistics in classic selling are, you know, most businesses closed on the 12th ask, but most people ask a maximum of 3 times. So that math probably relates to the Pareto law, right? The 80% of the business is done by 20% of your staff, you know, as I'm calculating that. But it's interesting because there's been a lot of, you know, especially now with COVID, one of the things that, it's funny that we're on Zoom today, but I feel like we're coming out of what was, you know, strictly, as you said, the last event we did at the club together was just before lockdown. And I'm back to doing some live events. I was just in Iowa doing the Young Agents Conference, Insurance Agents of Iowa. And what I'm finding is that people are needing that person-to-person contact more. But what happened is some of the bad habits that we as business people have became worse during COVID. So imagine for a moment, you need to get something from someone else, right? You need a positive response from someone. You have an ask and you would like a yes. People go to email quickly and they make that ask in email. Sometimes they pick up the phone, and rarely do they make an in-person call. They'll go maybe to a video call. But what was interesting is that some research done by Vanessa Bonds, who's a professor at Cornell, she sent people out because she wrote a book about influence. And in her research, she said she sent people out to ask for something. So she compared these 2 groups. First group, send an email. Second group, make an audio or video call. Audio or video, 84% versus 16% email. Okay, that was, what was it, 86 and 14, something huge like that, like 86% to 14% more effective to make a phone call or an audio call than to send an email with a request. But as they say in those late night infomercials, wait, there's more. She then took the highly successful audio video and compared it to in person. And it was 67% versus 33% in-person effectiveness versus audio video. So now if in-person dwarfs audio video that way, what does that say for in-person versus email? I can't even do that math.
A couple of things that you said really, you know, resonate because, you know, I do think we've all not known quite how to handle the last 2 years. You know, you do your best. Zoom is a little bit better than email. Email is so easy, you know, you gravitate to it because you can do it any time of the day or night. Usually you can get your thoughts together quickly and get an answer to somebody. No question, but that in person allows you to convey enthusiasm, trust. When you were talking about Frank Fusaro, I thought to myself, I don't know him very well, but when I first started, he was still on the board, and you know, I saw him a few times, and I thought, when you were talking about Frank, one of the things that differentiates him in my mind from a lot of other people is, I mean, he exudes confidence. You don't feel that he ever doubted himself. And you know, I mean, we all, or I can't say we all, me and a lot of people I know, you know, you suddenly will doubt yourself. You think, I think I know how to do this, but maybe I don't. And I have the feeling that Frank was always somebody who could go into a meeting and just exude a certain kind of confidence, and that helps too. And, you know, you're talking about the business world, but I spent, 30 years in the nonprofit world. And it's really the same. You're selling your mission. You're trying to convince people to invest in, you as much as the organization, because they may believe in the cause. But if there's 5 organizations all doing similar things, they're going to gravitate to the group that, seems capable and enthusiastic and delivers, right? I mean, what says they're going to do something and 18 months later, my goodness, they've done exactly what they said they were going to do. Nothing is worse than being the nonprofit that has to go, oh, well, it may all be true and it may have been out of your control, but you want to be the organization that goes back to a donor and says, we told you we were going to do this, we did it, now we've got our next set of challenges and here's our vision. And so it's really not that different even in the nonprofit world. You're out there.
No, it's everywhere. I mean, I love Dan's book, and I'll plug it again because I think Dan Pink is one of the best research writers that I've ever read. His latest book, The Power of Regret, was also tremendous. But the thing to keep in mind here with the email versus in person, because it is really easy to fire off an email. You can do it from your phone, you can do it from your desk, you can do it when you're in your bed. It's I feel I'm like Sam I am. Would you eat it with a fox? Would you eat it in a box? You can do it from anywhere. But think about, the hierarchy of communication, right? So I'm saying that in person matters. Now, if you can go back, a widely accepted study also is Meharibin out of UCLA, right? Who said 68% of our messages delivered via body English and 30-something% tone, and only 7% is the words that you use. And people tend to doubt that sometimes. And I say, if you want to doubt that, think about this for a moment. When I say to my wife, hey, I know you made a great dinner, but I'm stuck in the city, and she says, that's great. Does she say it? Does she say, oh, that's great? Or does she go, that's great? The words are the same. It's the tone and the body movement. And if you look at yourself, I just was in the airport in Iowa. I was looking at people talking on the phone. And I wrote about this, I don't remember, this week, next week, whenever it comes out. But what was really super interesting was I was watching people go through the trouble of cradling the phone in their neck so that they could emphasize the point that they were making, like this. And it wasn't all Italian people. Okay, I was in an airport in Iowa. Not a lot of us in Iowa. But the point is, people, we can't help but do the body English thing. It is how we communicate. That's why in person is so much more important. And there's a lot of things we can look for in body language I could tell you about, but just remember that if most of your message is delivered in your physicality, and the second biggest part of it is your tone, what does email have the tendency to do? It's just the words, which is the least effective part. So I can be writing it with a tone in my head that says this, and you're reading it in a completely different way. And I know we've all had this happen dozens and dozens of times because it's not how we were meant to communicate. When our ancestors millions of years ago encountered another being on the trail, they didn't know if that was friend, or foe, right? This person going to kill me, or is it a possible mate? So they turned their bodies sideways, kind of, this angle, because they protected their throat, heart, lungs, groin, vitals, right? Protect the vitals. And then when you realize, oh, this is friendly, then they offered their vitals. Today, if you meet someone and you do this, you open up your body completely squared up, wide open, hands away from your center mass, and you point your heart at their heart, I promise you a kinesthetic feeling that is different than what you're used to. You will physically feel different in your being. And that person will say, oh, I like this person. I mean, think about this a second. Lisa, I'll ask you this. Have you ever met, you don't have to answer, it's kind of rhetorical, but have you ever met anybody that you really didn't like that much, and they didn't say or do anything, just on first meeting, you kind of didn't care for them. Whatever it was off-putting. And I think that's happened to all of us. And what I think happens is people violate this trust stance you had referred to Frank as being confident, and that's part of it, right? When you come in and you're squared up and you make brief bit of eye contact, right? You meet somebody new, so your body language is open. As I said, you're front end loading rapport. When it's your limbic system, right? Your old lizard brain knows that when somebody talks to you from the side like this, they're protecting themselves. This is not a friend. A friend doesn't protect themselves. So your brain, when you're squared up, right, front and center with somebody, your brain says, "Oh, trusted friend," immediately. This is kind of hardwired into us from forever ago. And there's so many of these things that we can look for. So when you meet someone and you're squared up and you make brief eye contact, right? It's important. You make brief eye contact. You don't make this kind of, you can't, you don't want to be creepy, right? You don't hold eye contact like an alien trying to bore into their heads. You want to just make brief eye contact, say hello, and you meet somebody new today. Sometimes we shake hands, sometimes we fist bump, sometimes we elbow hit, but whatever it is, there's some kind of contact. Why is that? This is human.
Yes, and I think the interesting thing that we've all come through, 2 years plus a little on Zoom, the interesting thing is all of us met somebody on Zoom because life happens. You meet new business acquaintances, or in my case, I was teaching a class on Zoom for, 3 semesters. So, and it's interesting because on one hand, you feel like you didn't meet anybody, you didn't really connect with them, but you realize that Zoom does allow you to do something that email doesn't. You do get a little bit of a sense of people. There was somebody who I realized I met a few weeks ago for the first time, and I thought, I hadn't realized that I hadn't met this person, because they're very effective on Zoom. Their personality comes through. They don't turn their camera off. You can tell that they're listening when other people are talking. So even though you can't see people's body language perfectly, it is interesting that some people develop a good Zoom presence. And I certainly found with my students teaching that there were some students that their personalities really came through, and I had a really strong sense of who they were. And then there were other students, because they were quiet and because in a seminar setting, it's hard always to see exactly everybody on screen at once, and have your lesson, have your conversation, and also monitor, is everybody really speaking? And so from a facilitation point of view, Zoom is very hard if you're trying to ensure that everybody's engaged. And once you get past 6 or 8 people, you sort of reached that moment where you can't really see what's going on with everybody, where you could in a room. In a room, if we were all sitting around a round table, you could kind of scan and see what's happening. And, Zoom's not going away from our lives. As much as we all want to be in person 100%, you see the signs that a lot of things are going to continue to happen on Zoom. Even when we go back fully to in person, there'll still be some things that are more convenient. So we are going to have to learn how to use this tool effectively as part of our working lives.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a big deal. And what Zoom gives us is tone. And one of the things that we can do to be better communicators, as I said, you want to ask questions and listen, and then ask deeper questions. And then sometimes you get people that are a little bit reticent to speak. And there's ways to get them to open up, and there's ways to ask questions that, I can touch on real quick and talk about how to get somebody to open up. But at the same time, it's the tone, right? So if you meet someone and they speak this way, and that's their pace and their tone, but you meet them and you're this kind of talk and you want to talk that way, you're not going to get along. There's going to be a break in rapport, and neither of you will understand why you don't quite get one another. There's another wonderful, wonderful example is what I call a view from the air and a view from the ground. And you will see this constantly. If you're one, I promise you, God's cruel joke, your significant other is the other. And this view from the air, view from the ground is the thought that some people process events in huge pieces and other people process events in great detail. Neither one is better than the other, But what's interesting is that when they get together, rapport can be very difficult. And my feeling as a communications expert, speaker, coach, the things that I do when I teach people this stuff is you are responsible for the result of your communication. So if you want to get a point across, it's up to you to get the point across. If somebody said, if you can't say, well, she didn't know what I meant, or he misunderstood me, that doesn't serve you. That may well be, but it doesn't serve you. You are responsible for the result of your communication. That's basic tenet number one. Now we go in and we see this view from the air, view from the ground. So Lisa, we're talking to our friend who's got a view from the ground and we say, hey, how did it go, making your meeting in the morning? Because we know she was worried about getting to the meeting on time. And she's like, oh, it was okay. I got up at 6:15. I really meant to get up at 6, but I kept hitting the snooze. I hate when I do that. I always hit the snooze, but I went downstairs, I made some coffee. And by the way, Keurig, do you have one? Awesome machine. One cup at a time. I used to throw away like so much coffee. Now I just hit the thing. And, then I was trying to get my travel mug ready, but the dog, of course, wanted to go out. So I opened the back door and I let her out. But then I watched her because I have that hole in the fence. I don't think she can fit, but I worry. So I was watching her and I noticed it was drizzling. I'm like, oh my God, it's drizzling. I can't believe this. I picked out a beige suit. It's going to look horrible. Let me go change. I'll get my dark suit. So I bring the dog in. I get the dark suit. I got my coffee. I put it in the travel mug and I took off for the office. And have you been down Brewer Boulevard, by the way? There's that construction project. These big concrete round pipes. You could practically walk. I don't know, that's water, sewer, whatever. But anyway, the flag guy did a good job. I got through pretty quick. And in our building, they have that overhang in the front. I actually got a spot under the overhang and I made the meeting with 10 minutes to spare. That's my view from the ground person. Then I asked my view from the air person the very same thing. Hey, how did it go making the meeting this morning? Oh, awesome, man. Went downstairs to grab a cup of coffee, noticed it was raining, grabbed my dark suit, dark trench coat, umbrella, got in the car, breezed through the construction at Brewer, snagged a spot under the building, made the meeting with 10 minutes to spare. It's the same story. But what's the problem? When the person who tells the story in large chunks of information tells that story to someone who has a view from the ground, the person with the view from the ground in their brain is saying, oh, you don't think I'm smart enough. Oh, I'm not important enough for you to tell me details. You're just blowing me off. And vice versa, when the person who's got a view from the ground is telling someone with a view from the air this story, the person with a view from the air is doing all these body language things. They're going, can we land this plane? Is there a point?
You lost me at Keurig.
They're doing the whole body thing. Now, what is the other person doing? Is this good rapport? This is horrible rapport. Now, when the detail person starts asking the other person some questions, the guy with the view from the air says, what are you writing a book? What? Oh, are you trying to trip me up? In their brain, are you trying to trip me up? She thinks I'm lying. Not good for rapport. So I bring this up because it's the simplest of personality types to distinguish. And when you notice somebody who has a view from the ground, many, many, many details, and you have a view from the air, couldn't you throw in a little color commentary? Throw a couple of things in there that make that person feel as though you really want to tell them the story and they are important. And the other way around, if you are a person who gives a great amount of detail, but you realize the person you're speaking with wants big gulps of information, you could edit it down as long as you're conscious of it. To me, and it's, I've had people say to me, well, Frank, isn't that a bit manipulative to start to match somebody's pace, tone, speech style? And I don't think so. I think it's like I learned a little Mandarin right before my trip to China. I think you just have to get along better. And trying to, the basis of all of this stuff and persuasion is always looking for a conclusion that is good for the person you're talking for and good for you as well.
Well, I know that you're a very wise person and you help people work through their issues. And it is about listening as much as giving them information. How did you make that transition? I mean, you were working in sales at one moment in your career, you were running a company at another moment in your career, and now what I'll call your third act is you're really trying to help people be the best they can be, whether it's in their personal lives or their professional lives or both. And I think part of what you're doing is helping bolster people's confidence. But how did you wake up one morning and say, no more running the company, I'm going to do this now?
It's funny. It's something that I wanted to do before my last iteration, when I took a partnership in a business called SOS in New York, and I took the partnership because it seemed like the right move at the time, and I spent 5 years there, 6 years there, and it went well, and I'm still associated. But what I learned during that time is that what I wanted to do was go and talk to big groups about communications and selling. And I'd studied for I've read everything there was to read, so many different studies. I've gone to so many classes. As I said, I went and got a degree in NLP because I stunk at this. I was that person that just wouldn't shut up. On my website, in the About section, I blew up a piece of my report card. It said, Frank is very talkative. I just never stopped. And I found over time, I learned that, if you want to be charismatic, if you want to be persuasive, there are a lot of components to that. And NLP was my basis to start to learn that. And I thought, boy, I could teach so many people this, because it's not that well known. There are some people who do this naturally, and a lot of people that don't. And just learning the personality types, that little one that we just did, view from the air, view from the ground, is one example. A couple of body language, like I took Joe Navarro, the FBI guy, took his body language class. And it's just, there's amazing things that if you keep studying it, you can integrate in, and it just kind of helps you get along. I feel as though these skills that they call soft skills, right? To me, this skill set will do more for your personal relationships, your business relationships, and your bank balance than any other skills that you can learn. I really believe that. And, we talked about charity before. You can see behind me, Give Blood, right? So I was the president of the Cooley's Anemia Foundation for 12 years, and I've been a board member for 35 years. And I am raising money all the time, as all of us in the foundation, like you talked about, we're constantly doing that. And I think we do give a great ROI. When my youngest was diagnosed, they told me she wouldn't make it to her teen years. That was in 1985. And she's now 37 and has a baby. And doesn't mean that, the disease is cured and we don't have to raise funds. We still do. Her life involves an arduous process to keep her healthy. The treatment is really very difficult, including giving herself a needle every night and attaching a pump that she sleeps with for 12 hours and going for blood transfusion every 2 weeks. And she has since she's 6 months old. So, all of this is to say that we have given our investors a great ROI. I feel great going out asking for money, because look at the progress we've made. Where else, your dollar could be the one that changes everything, as it's already happened over this short time period of 35 years. We've gone from certain death to she'll probably be somebody's grandmother, God willing. So now we have to do more to make the lives of our patients better and help them to normalize. We still lose too many too young. The treatment is really difficult to keep up with, and it's kind of like smoking, I guess, where if the next one you lit up would kill you, you wouldn't. But because it's insidious, you keep going thinking tomorrow. We have kids that don't do that pump. They don't give themselves the needle and the pump, and they think tomorrow, and suddenly they're in crisis. So we're still losing them too young because of the difficulties. But anyway, point is, all of the communication skills and all of the study for all the years, and why I do what I do now, is because I just feel like people can benefit so much from learning a little bit about what makes other folks tick, how to appreciate somebody else's map of the world, pay attention to it, work with it, rather than trying to force our way in, like, we've some classical sales training that I've seen in the past, which I think is just a complete mistake and shouldn't be done that way. It's about helping, it's about listening, and it's about leading people to a conclusion that's great for them and good for you.
Well, yeah, and I think, one of the interesting things too, since you mentioned Cooley's anemia, is that, organizations have to do everything you just said. Organizations have to listen and evolve. And so if we took a snapshot of Cooley's anemia information pre the internet, the first website and the website now, you'd think that it was 3 different organizations, because when you were bound by paper, you either had to give somebody a mountain or try to reduce it to like a trifold brochure, which is not satisfying on either end of that spectrum. The first website, I'm sure, was like every nonprofit's website. After the address and the phone number, there wasn't a whole lot there. And you go to the website now, and I was on the website recently, and I don't want to make a plug for Cooley's Anemia, but there's a gala upcoming, and that's why I was on the website, to make a donation. But, I think you go to the website now and, you learn a lot, even if you have no reason to know about Cooley's Anemia. I mean, it's very focused on the patient when you go to that website, and very focused on the research that's going on, the services that are required, the kind of support network that the organization can provide to people. And I think that that's true of Cooley's Anemia and other organizations as well, but I think the web has allowed us to tell a richer tale to a lot of people and let them explore the way they want to explore. So you learn the address and phone number, or you can learn about current research and challenges, or you can learn about people who've achieved something, like your daughter, who has a story to tell of, how she's not overcome the disease, but learned to live with it in a productive and effective way. And so everything you just said about people, institutions have to evolve in that same way.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. And so, kind of to wrap up, because I know we're up against clock, and I don't want to keep everyone all night and that kind of thing. But just, if this is interesting and I can be helpful to you in any way, please reach out to me. My website is just my name. It's franksomma.com, as is my email address is frank@franksomma. And if you just have questions and you want me to answer them, send me an email, I'll answer them. I think my phone number is in my response, call me. We're all in this together, and I'm happy to help.
Well, this was fantastic. We did have one comment about the second person forgot to walk the dog, but I'm going to assume that second person just didn't think that was an important enough detail to tell anybody, and that they didn't forget about the poor dog.
That's really great. That's great listening skills, whoever brought that up. Wonderful.
So one question, what communication advice can you offer to extroverted introverts?
Extroverted introverts. I don't know if I know what that means.
Well, Antonella could unmute herself and tell us what she means by that.
Hi, Frank. How are you?
I am terrific.
So basically, I'm sure you've heard of extroverts and introverts, but there are people who exist who appear to be extroverted, but really are introverted. So they can keep up with, appearing to be outgoing and talkative, but it actually does drain them like it would an introvert. So do you have advice for people like that?
Yeah, I'll go right back to the beginning. Just ask questions and listen. You can more effectively move folks with questions than you can with statements. So if you're naturally introverted, just lead other people to talk. One of the greatest techniques that you can use to make someone else talk more, so you don't feel like you're on the line and have to speak, is to repeat the last couple of words of their sentence with a slight change in your tone to make it a question. So if you said to me, I had to work late tonight, I could say, late? You say, well, yeah, because there was an event at the club, and we were all getting set up, and we knew that it was going to take extra time, but the whole crew was there. The whole crew. Oh yeah, I was there with Lisa, and Jefferson was there, and Joe was there. You know what I'm saying? Like when you repeat the last couple of words of somebody's sentence with a little bit of a question mark, they are compelled to give you more information.
Oh, thank you. Good tip.
Well, I think a good tip is a great way to wrap up. I think we all would love to listen to you even more. So, and actually, I'm going to do a plug for an upcoming event. We do actually have an event with you and Peter Chiecco about Cooley's anemia up on the calendar. And I will have to ask my colleagues, Antonella or Joseph or Jefferson, to tell us the date because I don't remember the date.
It's Tuesday, the 24th, next Tuesday.
Great. So it's an in-person event here, and you know, we hope we'll see some of you there, and we definitely will see you, Frank. And thank you so much for spending time with us tonight.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great to see you.
Have a great evening.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.